A couple of miles outside of Humiston, Iowa, the story of number 40 starts here. The first child of Mike and Patty Street, Christopher Michael Street, was born on February 2nd, 1972.
He was a wonderful son. You couldn't have asked for a better son.
Followed by younger sister Sarah and baby Betsy.
When I was little, I have pictures of him rocking me in the chair and reading books to me.
Well, we used to have hogs when he was younger. You know, you do kind of get that hard work habits back then. Of course, he was so much taller, you know, than the other kids. I mean, he was very coordinated for his age.
He never went through that uncoordinated stage that you would expect for a taller kid.
Christopher showed natural talent in many sports, but even early on, one sport rose above.
He loved basketball. I mean, even after football practice, he would come home and shoot hoops. We always knew he was pretty good for Southern Iowa, and we felt like that if he was going to get the exposure he needed and improve like he needed, that we probably needed stiffer competition.
So after Christopher's freshman year at Mormon Trail High School, the Street family moved to Indianola.
I was scared of moving to a bigger school because I had 27 or 28 people in my class and moved up to 210 or something. I mean, after I got into it and worked with everyone, it was a lot better. I mean, I'm glad we did now.
We were sophomores in high school and he had just moved to Indianola from Mormon Trail. And so, small school, it's not hard to run into them, and we just had friends that were together, and then we started dating right away.
Just a small town farm boy, you're not going to find, you weren't going to find a better dude, you know, around. Just somebody that, you know, really cared about other people. He was never too good to, you know, to go out of his way to talk to an underclassman like myself.
You know the name Casey Blake, and his father Joe called me on the phone one afternoon in August. He said, "Hey Bert, you got to stop down to football practice." "What are you talking about?" "Well, there's just something you ought to see down there." So I went down to football practice. Here's one helmet above everybody else's, and I mean a complete helmet. Whoa. "Didn't you know, Coach, that this Street kid moved into town?" I said, "No, I had no idea. Can he play basketball?" And I think that's his favorite sport, and I knew we had something right there.
So when I was a senior in high school, we took a team to Virginia for an AAU tournament. So there was a sophomore down at Indianola named Chris Street. Nobody really heard much of him. He just moved in from this small school. So he came and played with us on this trip. And even then, you know, being 2 years younger, he could still hold his own.
And soon after, college coaches came calling.
Chris Street gave you a tingle. You watched him compete and talk to him, and there was just something about him.
We had about 1,000 campers, and I saw this thin, tall, athletic-looking kid walking. I knew exactly who it was.
Being an Iowa kid, you know, we thought we could get on him really early.
Coach Wesley and Coach Hallahan and Coach Orr talking about him and what a tremendous athlete he was, and then the second sentence usually was, "Well, you know he's going to be a Hawk."
He was definitely going to be a Hawkeye. And there was never an opportunity to recruit him to Iowa State.
After camp, I remember Coach Davis and myself were talking about it, and we said, "What the heck, let's offer him." And so we did, and it was one of the first underclass offers in the country.
I said, "No, there's no hurry on this." I said, you just, you know, we don't want to rush you or anything. You take your time, and it might be, you know, however long before you can decide it's what you want or not. And Chris, as he walked out the door, the parents went out of the door of my office ahead of Chris, and Chris stuck his head back in the door, and he says, "I'll call you tonight."
He's a good all-around player. It's just that he had committed when he was a junior. And that kind of put us out of the picture.
Chris enrolled at the University of Iowa in the fall of 1990.
His freshman year, he had promise. He was kind of a long, gangly kid that played against smaller kids in high school, and so it was a transition for him.
They wanted to bring the freshmen in slowly, but Chris could have played, obviously started right away, and I think it was the 4th or 5th game, and he just came in and asserted himself right away.
Early in his career, he was pretty much a defender, a rebounder.
Chris was the point on Dr. Tom's press, and he was so good at it. He had great hands. He deflected a lot of balls. He was always about 2 feet over the end line, which made it very difficult to get the ball in bounds.
The officials were always warning him. They'd say, "Chris, don't cross the line." And then they'd hand the ball to the offensive guy, and Chris would step right across the line again. So he took it all the way to the limit.
He's one of those guys where you're like, "God, I'm tired of playing this guy," because he's always always on, 110%.
Whether it's loose balls, rebounds, charges drawn, and Chris wanted to win every category.
His sophomore year was the year that he just was like coming into his own.
The 6'8" sophomore from Indianola jumped into a starting role and is averaging 10 points a game, something he knew he could do all along.
I was expecting the kind of season that I'm having now. It wasn't a real surprise. I worked real hard, and this is where I wanted to be, and I knew I could be like this last year, but I just didn't have the confidence enough to do it, and I worked real hard this summer, so I think it's paying off.
The kid who grew up dreaming of playing for Iowa began to inspire a legion of future Hawkeyes.
I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, I think, when he got to Iowa, and just remember the energy that he provided.
Relentless, tough, hard-nosed. He hustled, he dove on the floor, played defense, he rebounded.
Played so hard because he always wanted to be a Hawk, and then he got that chance, and he wasn't going to let it just kind of slip by.
Street, nice play.
The epitome of what Iowa basketball stood for.
There's nobody better a person than Chris, and nobody worked harder on the court. It's those type of players that, you know, fans love, especially here, you know, in the Hawkeye State.
He made everyone feel welcome. He never blew anyone off, kids especially, who were always so excited to see him. You know, when we'd go to McDonald's in our hometown, people would run into him and they'd want his autograph.
And if there was a line to get autographs and it was time for you to shower or time for you to load the bus, Chris didn't want to leave till everybody got his autograph. Chris was adamant about, no, till everybody's leave, I'll stay here as long as I have to.
He really wanted to touch those lives of those kids.
By the time his junior season rolled around, the kid from Humiston developed into one of the Hawkeyes' main threats.
He was a matchup nightmare for most coaches. Everybody was preparing for AC in the inside, preparing for Val Barnes on the outside. But the one thing about Chris is you couldn't prepare for him because he was so good inside. He could score with either hand. But he also worked on the shot so much that year.
Here's Street, big shot, big shot by Chris Street.
People didn't realize how good a three-point shooter he was. He didn't take a whole lot of them, but the ones that he took were very high quality. Obviously, he was a great free throw shooter.
Street makes both foul shots.
Chris rattled off 10 in a row, 20, even 30 straight free throws without a miss. At 32 in a row, Chris was within reach of the all-time Iowa record.
CBS Sports welcomes you to the cozy confines called Cameron Indoor Stadium. Big Ten meets ACC today as 13th ranked Iowa faces number 3 Duke.
Playing Duke, oh gosh. That was the third time in 3 years that Iowa had played Duke. We played them the 2 years prior in the NCAA tournament.
Knocked us out in the NCAA tournament both years.
For years, I hated them because we went against them all the time, and we never won.
They were the #1 program in the country, and that's what we were trying to get.
In his 7th year at Iowa. Here are his starting players. Chris Street, good rebounder, up front along.
Chris didn't back down from anybody.
Parks defending. Street on the follow, however, and he is hammered by Hill.
In that legendary venue, Chris Street authored some school history.
Mom and I, we couldn't even watch because we were so nervous for him.
That's 33 straight he has made. And a chance to break Ben McGill's record.
After he made his 2 free throws, we just erupted and the whole house was just crazy.
Here Thomas Hill grew up. Here's a pass over to Street.
Chris finished with 14 points, 8 rebounds, and a new school record for the most consecutive free throws made at 34 and counting.
Scoops it in. And there's a guy who can play in the NBA too.
That was Chris's type of game, though, because he played with emotion. He wanted to win.
And it was like a heavyweight boxing match. I mean, it was just trading blows to the very end, and we just ran out of time.
The Hawkeyes lost the game 65-56.
Obviously, we didn't like losing, but we felt really good about the team coming out of that game, how well and how hard we played against a real good team, and we felt really encouraged as to where our team was headed.
That might have been the first day of classes.
We were out at a hotel.
We always stayed out at the Highlander.
The university made us stay at hotels the night before games.
You could eat out at the hotel anytime, and guys would kind of come and go and eat out there if they had night class.
Me and Chris had a night class together.
And we went out and had dinner.
I'd eaten early, and Chris was just going to eat a little bit later. I passed him in the hallway and just kind of said, hey, how you doing?
He was already there eating with his girlfriend.
We're actually at the same table.
I rode over there with him, but because he had a class, he had to leave early.
I left early. I told Chris, make sure you come to night class tonight because the game's tomorrow. Don't mess around.
The last thing I remember telling him is, hey, I'll swing by your apartment after we're done eating. I'll just wait for you after you get out of class, and we're going to hang out that night.
You know, I just remember that night being at dinner with the team and Highlander and leaving.
At 10 till 7, I was dispatched to a personal injury motor vehicle collision at North Dodge Street, Highway 1, and at the time it was the entrance to the Highlander Inn. There were 3 vehicles involved. That was very obvious, at least 3 vehicles. There was a secondary roads materials truck and combination plow. There was a vehicle on its top resting up against or very near to another car that had also obviously been struck. For whatever reason, Chris pulled out and tried to execute a left-hand turn onto Highway 1, and he passed directly in front of the snowplow. The plow blade basically hit the side of Chris's car from the front axle to the rear axle and did exactly what a plow blade is designed to do. It picked up and tossed Chris Street's vehicle.
We drove by the accident, and I was actually with James Winters and a couple of managers.
You could see where there was an accident, and it looked pretty bad. We just kind of drove by and said, oh man, that was bad. I hope everybody's okay. And as we were driving, I started to think, wait a minute, that color of that car looked like it might be the same color as Chris's car.
James said, that looks like Chris's car. And I said, no, he left like a half hour ago.
And I got stopped on the bridge over 80 that there had been an accident. And I stopped and I said, is it an Iowa basketball player in the accident? And he said, no, it looked like an out-of-state plates. But for some reason, I just knew it was an Iowa person. I just knew it was one of our people. I don't know why. Pretty soon my phone rang and one of the managers was there for dinner and says that they wanted Tom Davis out there right away. I called Tom at his house, and I just live a few blocks from him, and I says, Tom, I'm going to pick you up right away. I think something terrible has happened.
You know, as I got the phone call and the knock on the door, you could tell right away that it wasn't good.
Took Tom out there, and they waved us on through so that they could to the accident scene, and they took Tom down and told him what had happened.
Knock on the door, and here's the sheriff.
At 12, you don't really know what to think when all of a sudden a police officer rings your doorbell.
He says, do you own a such and such car? And I said, yes. And he said, well, there's been an accident. I said, how bad? And he says, fatal, and I instantly hit the floor.
I remember hearing my dad ask who was driving, and at that point that I knew that there had been something bad. And later my dad came in and told me, Christopher has been killed in a car accident. And so, I mean, he was in shock, I think. He didn't really, it was one of those things where we knew we didn't have a lot of time, we had to get family told, so he kind of did this is what I need you to do, and I'm gonna go tell your mom.
Our life stopped that night. Just our hearts just didn't have a heart anymore. It just was out of our body. It just took it.
I was sitting at Lincoln High School. There was a break in the action, and over the loudspeaker it said, Sarah Street, you need to come either to the scores table or someplace. And we all kind of looked at each other and we thought, oh, this is a joke. There was somebody on the phone for me, and it was a family friend, and he just said, Sarah, you need to get home as soon as you can. I ran into the house, and Betsy, my sister, met me halfway, and she said, Christopher was in an accident, he's dead. And I just remember running right past her, all the way into the house, all the way up to my parents' bed. And I just laid on my bed and I just cried and I said, it can't be.
I get to class. The teacher knows we're in there. He asked me, where's Chris?
Drove back out to the Highlander. And by the time we got back out there, it would have been maybe 15 minutes later. The scene was all blocked off, and there was probably 10 cop cars on the scene and 2 or 3 ambulances on the scene. And at that point, we knew it was Chris.
We got a phone call that a manager was coming to pick us up.
Kevin Ralston used to be our head manager, called me and said, Wade, you need to come to the arena right away. Chris has been in a car accident.
I'll never forget receiving the call from Tom Davis, who was At first, I could hardly understand him because his voice was breaking up.
Tom's shirt was wet from crying so hard, and everybody was just sitting there crying.
To see the emotion on Coach Davis's face and John Street's face and Jerry Strom and the other coaches, you know, we just knew something tragic had happened.
I was in kind of a fog myself. I was trying to imagine how the Street family felt. I was trying to imagine what my players were going through, what my assistant coaches were going through, and our family, you know, trying to offer whatever leadership and guidance I could to them and help them through this.
We held each other's hands, we cried on each other's shoulders, we hugged each other. It was a sense of, we're going to get through this, but it hurts so much.
I said, just, hey, I don't want you even thinking about basketball. I don't want you even thinking about the season. This is a time for other reflections and to do our best to honor Chris.
You know, I get home and the answering machine is blinking. So I press the button and you hear messages asking for Chris, and it's just like, oh my gosh, you know, how am I going to do this? I got to call people and let them know that Chris just passed away.
I remember my roommate coming and saying that my friend was on the phone and something horrible has happened. And, you know, it just seemed like, you know, it was probably, you know, probably 30 or 40 yards down to my dorm room, but it just seemed like that walk or actually run just lasted forever.
It came on the TV during the news broadcast, and they talked about Chris was killed in a car accident, and it was a surreal moment.
Dad answered the phone and immediately turned on the news, and certainly noticed that my dad's eyes started to well up with tears.
Saw his picture flash up on TV, and I felt like something was wrong, and by the time I ended up getting back to my apartment, Coach Heron and the Southern coaching staff, they were there waiting for me to break the news.
Mike Kelker, our head coach, said everybody be quiet and turn up the radio. And when they said Chris Street, like anybody else in the state, a piece of you, you know, a piece of me died that night.
I woke up just thinking, I'll never get to be with my brother again here on earth. You know, as a high school senior, you just don't think those things are going to happen.
I know the visitation, I had to kind of fill in for Mike and Patty because there were so many people. There were so many people there that they finally had to bow out because they just basically there was too much stress.
We actually took a bus down to the funeral home the night before the funeral and went for the visitation.
We, first of all, wanted to show our support to Chris and then to his family.
As we were getting ready to leave the funeral home, our team just kind of huddled up in a circle and just put their arms around each other, and they were just trying to get through it.
Get on the bus, and the first thing I think of is, I gotta wear his number. We need to do something. I mean, this is, you know, one of our brethren.
You throw the rivalry aside, and you see the person and the relationships that we built with Chris, and really all of us had played with him at one time or another. Morgan Wheat was the first player to wear it my junior year. That following season, I wore it. And then after that, Lauren Meyer wore it for a season. Then Clay Edwards, I believe, was the one after that.
When that happened, I welled up because the respect that Iowa State had given him as a player and a person, it meant a lot.
Tremendously classy, and I know we appreciate it. I know the family appreciated it.
The funeral was a statewide event. It was a significant media event. There were 3,000 people at the ceremony.
I was one of the pallbearers for the funeral, and of course I remember Paul Lusk and all the Hawkeyes.
Sarah read an unbelievable speech the day of the funeral, and she was probably 17 at the time, and just powerful words.
Dear Christopher number 40, I'm writing you my last goodbye for a while. I'll see you someday when I meet you in heaven. Why did it have to happen to you? You had so much going for you. You were all I could have asked for in a brother and more. You were always there for me when I needed you. You always supported me in everything, and you were the nicest guy. I have so many awesome memories of you and our family. I remember all the times we played basketball, football, wiffle ball, etc. You are my idol. You had it all: athletic talent, desire, heart, good looks, good friends, everything. I just can't believe that you'll never put your long, strong arms around me and give me that huge smile of yours ever again. I realize you went to a much better place than here on earth, but we'll miss you so much. You meant the world to our family. We'll never forget you as long as we live. When I look around, all I can think of is you and not being able to come home. Well, goodbye. I love you so much. God will take care of you, I know. We'll try to be strong and look forward to the day when we meet you again. Love, Sarah, number 40.
Coach gave us a few days off. We obviously had the funeral, and it was, you know, you guys need to focus on other things. We'll get back to basketball when we have to.
The Michigan State game at Michigan State, that was the first game after Chris had died.
I just remember going to East Lansing and then physically and emotionally just burnt, stressed out.
I look out on the court and, you know, just for a second you say there, you know, in your own mind there's Chris out there. You know, and he wasn't, but I thought I saw him out there.
It looked pretty bleak in that game.
We were down 18 points with 3.5 minutes to go.
AC and Val made some plays.
And then Val Barnes kept going down and just nailing three-pointers.
Barnes three, got it, yeah!
He hit one that was so far out. It had to come from up above, it had to.
Barnes, he's gonna try to tie it, and he did! What a shot, what a shot! I mean, he was way out there.
It was just insane. The comeback, I mean, we were ahead by a lot, and the comeback was incredible.
Tied it in regulation, won it in overtime, and it just was amazing.
Was there a sixth man on the court? I think, without question, there was that night.
It was one of those games that was crushing to lose, and yet you caught yourself sitting there saying, if it's possible to have a rewarding loss, that one might be the most ultimate rewarding loss because it was way bigger than the game.
The first home game back, we played Michigan, and this is back the Fab Five heyday.
Vitale had anointed those guys, and you know, I feel sorry for them in a sense because they walked into a buzzsaw.
I don't know if Carver Hawkeye will ever reach that feat.
I don't think we beat them by 10 or 15, but it's just one of those games we had control of the whole game, and it was fun. We took the game ball over to Chris's parents and gave them the ball, and they were smiling and happy and crying at the same time, and we all were smiling, happy, and crying at the same time. It was very emotional.
It really pleased me immensely, maybe as much as anything that has been done as far as Indiana basketball is concerned over the years, that the Street family requested that the jersey be retired at this game.
One of the greatest Hawkeyes of all time, Christopher Michael Street.
You know, as a mom, I love doing things for my kids, you know. And of course, it doesn't seem like I can do that much now for him, so I just feel like I'm doing it for him. Oh, I love the chimes. It's something that I'm caring for him. It just gives me a warm feeling, you know, when I do it, because I feel like I'm doing it for him. I'll just come out and I'll just visit with him just a little bit. And you know, I know he isn't here, he's in heaven. But it's just kind of a place where you just can sit and get away from everything and then just talk to him.
It's hard to keep your emotions in check because 20 years later, I think the pain is still there. And I think it will be there for a long time because you just know that this world lost a really tremendous person.
You know, what he accomplished in those short 20 years was more than most people accomplish their whole life. And the people that he impacted was just way beyond, you know, imaginable.
It's been 20 years, and the people that knew Chris, and whether it's teammates or fans or players from other schools, they still remember Chris.
Every time I go to Iowa, I still look at his little plaque.
That's a daily reminder to our current student athletes who Chris was, what he stood for, and so on a daily basis they walk into that locker room and they're reminded.
We talk about him and we educate them, so the next generation and the next generation and the next generation will remember who he was
and he was a great Hawk.
He was one of those guys that wouldn't let you slack off. If you were giving 50%, he'd know you were giving 50%, he'd let you know that you were giving 50%. So he was a great motivator as well as a great teammate, great friend, and like a lot of people remember him as a great player.
He has an everlasting legacy, especially and certainly in that state.
You know, I think some people, as they go through Iowa, sometimes they are forgotten, but Chris Street will never be forgotten.
Even though that next generation maybe not quite remember who he was, but they see the signs, and then maybe they played in a basketball tournament down at his gym growing up, and you know, maybe they see his jersey hanging there by the locker room, and they'll know who he is.
People can try and emulate him, but there'll never be anybody that can do everything, be everything, mean everything to a state like he did.
I try to keep his memory alive as much as I possibly can to the younger players, because obviously I want them to be like him.
People knew him as Chris Street, the basketball player, and I just cannot say enough about what kind of a person he was.
The kind of friend that you want to have, the kind of teammate that you would want to have, the kind of student that a teacher would want to have, and the kind of player that a coach would want to have.
Someone that I could hope that my kids would try to emulate.
We need to live life more like Chris, and you wake up and have a zeal and an excitement to be a part of this great life. And Chris lived it that way. No one lived it better.
Christopher respected elders, enjoyed life, and lived it to the fullest. He set out his dreams, he set his goals, he worked hard for them, and he went after them. And he achieved. He finally got there.
There's just so many times I just still wish that he was at the Thanksgiving table or the Christmas table, or just doing things as a family with us. He was just such a good son, and I love everything about him, and I miss him so much.